Hi, sir. Good morning.
Morning, Farhan. Morning, everyone. We'll
Good
join
morning,
in
sir.
a couple of minutes. I just have to take one phone call. Just right back.
Good morning, sir.
Everyone, again. Okay. How are
Hi,
you guys
sir.
today?
Yes, sir. Good.
Okay. Good to start. How many of you guys have written Apex class, Apex programs? Nobody? Okay. So you guys are raising hands. Thank you. How about Satish, Gomati, Faiz? I hope you guys have written Apex classes as well, right? Rishita, have you written Apex classes? I know Vignesh has written. Dinesh, I know he's writing. Sanjana, I'm not sure. Have you guys written Apex classes?
No, yes, we have not done that one.
Okay. Is that Mahesh?
Yeah, yes, this is
Okay.
Apex.
Okay. How about you, Rishita? Apex classes?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute Riaz. So I did not start writing Apex classes. I think I have to try this weekend as I'm tightly packed with production deployments this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Now today, I just want to cover the best practices of to be followed in Apex. That's why I asked that question. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'll share a URL where we have certain best practices from Salesforce. Okay, I just want to make sure we understand that why we need to do it. Okay, have you guys have understanding of governor limits? What is Apex governor limits, and what is the why we have governor limits? Any thoughts? Governor limits. Okay, interesting. I want to first cover the governor limits, and then we can talk about the best practices, because governor limits is very critical feature Salesforce enforces to make sure the resources are utilized. It's a cloud system, right? So we need to make sure we are not consuming resources which is shared across multiple tenants. Okay, let me share my screen. And okay. And also, I believe we have spoke about the call that Apex order of execution trigger, like Apex order of execution or Salesforce transaction order of execution. Have we talked about it, or we haven't? Because order of execution. I say yes or no. I just want to understand. Have we talked about this or not? Order of execution.
Oh, sir.
No. Okay. Okay, fair enough. So let me first cover the governor limits, and then we'll talk about the order of execution, and then we'll come to the best practices. Okay. Okay. So the first basic understanding is why governor limits. Okay. So since it is a multi-tenant environment, we talked about the Salesforce architecture, multi-tenant architecture, right? So since it is a multi-tenant environment, we have to make sure all the resources are properly utilized. No resource are overused by some particular tenants. So basically, do not monopolize shared resources. That's the idea. This is why Salesforce enforces limits to make sure all the resources are used properly. Now, the most common resources with respect to data are SOQL and SOSL and DML. Okay, so SOQL queries, all of these are to avoid abusing the database, access. Okay, if we are going to Salesforce limits accessing only 50,000 records. Okay, they don't want to keep on accessing millions of records from the database. That would stall the database server resources, right? So they are restricting at a time you can access 50,000 records and process it, period. Okay, and meanwhile we have limits of accessing making 100 queries only in a transaction. Okay, asynchronous, synchronous, we will talk about this. Synchronous is where the process happens immediately. Asynchronous is based on the resource availability. It will happen like your batch Apex, queuable Apex, all of those falls under asynchronous, future calls. Okay. Synchronous is your basic trigger execution and everything, which happens at the time of an action from the user. So 100 queries you can make, and maximum of 50,000 records you can retrieve. Okay, and 150 TML statements can be issued. Can anyone say what is DML?
Insert update.
Data manipulating.
Data manipulation language. Okay. Why don't we have DDL in Salesforce? What is DDL?
Data definition language, I think.
Right. Yes, that's right. But why don't we have DDL here in Salesforce? Okay, Salesforce is again like metadata driven architecture, right? So all the data definitions we do earlier via UI, or we can do it via metadata insertions. Okay, so everything comes under DML. There is no separate DDL is needed. And in a transaction, we can make 115 DML statements. Okay, if I want to create 10 orders, right? Instead of doing database insert for 10 times, it is advised to put the 10 records in a list and do one DML operation. Okay, so because we have only 150 DML statements can be issued. Okay, so these are like very high level on the data point of view. Okay, and with respect to the callouts, you can make only 100 callouts in a transaction. And there is a restriction on what is the time that we can wait. Can you guys tell what is the here we have CPU time. So this is the time limit that Salesforce enforces on a transaction. If your transaction cannot go beyond 10,000 milliseconds. How many seconds it is?
In seconds.
Okay, so your transaction can never exceed 10,000 milliseconds. That's all. If it crosses 10,000 milliseconds, you will get a CPU limit error and your transaction stops. Okay. And so maximum rows per Apex cursor 50 million cursor rows fetched per day. So these are like I think daily limits, but events you can publish up to 150 events. Okay, in a transaction. Push notifications again 2000. That's what is mentioned. Okay, so again you have to understand the why. Then it will be easy to remember all of these limits. Okay. Any questions on why we have limits? Okay. Now Salesforce transactions, it whoever from the computer science background and who has studied database, there is something called asset properties. Any idea what it is? Anyone know about asset properties? I'm just sharing my screen. See the limit, your transaction, your order of execution, best practices are all linked together. Okay. First, you need to understand what is my limitation, and then you need to understand how the transaction works in the Salesforce ecosystem. You need to understand what sequence the operations are running, and you can then the best practices will be very handy. This will only make sense later. Not just going through the best practices will make sense. Okay, so if you guys know answer, please say. Otherwise, say I don't know. That's fine. Anyway, so you can go through asset properties. It's a very basic concept. Okay, so this ensures the data is integrity of the data is maintained. Okay, via this asset. Okay, so that basically atomicity makes sure when transaction happens, okay, either the transaction completes or it doesn't complete altogether. So consistently make sure that there are no data issues later. Okay, so just review this asset properties. So Salesforce, every transaction, this is all limit applicable at the transaction level. One transaction, Salesforce ensures the transaction is either complete or it rolls back everything. It means the transaction should be complete or it it will error out. For example, if I want to update, the contacts phone number, right? Or if I want to update a contact's email address, 10 contact email address I want to update. Okay, I'm writing one simple Apex class to do that. If there is one contact failure, okay, at that time the whole transaction is reverted. So even though 9 email address update can happen correctly, the 10th email address have some issues, the system will revert back everything.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Yes. Is there any question? So no. So Durai, Sanjana, Rishita, so far are we clear with the limits? Why we are having these limits?
Riaz, I have a question. Like,
Yes.
total number of records retrieved by Sockle queries, okay? Synchronous is like 50,000 records and asynchronous is 50,000 records. So then, when we encounter Sockle 101, then what is that issue?
Sockle 101 is this one. Total number of Sockle queries. 101. This is number of queries. This is number of records.
Sir. So we are
Okay.
facing some network issues.
Okay.
We couldn't hear you.
Okay. Is it audible now?
Sir, in the office there is some network issue. Some of them have leave the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, please. They can disconnect and connect from one system. That's okay. 1 or 2 systems. Yeah. Rishita, is that answer your question? So this 101 is based out of the number of SQL queries that we can make. And this 50,000 is the number of records we retrieve using those queries.
Yes, but I don't understand between 100 and 200. Like, asynchronous is like 200. We always encounter to 101, but we never go through for 200 plus, right?
Correct. So synchronous, right? And
Mm-hmm.
asynchronous. Asynchronous is your Apex batch. Whenever you run a batch job, let's say you will not have 101 error because you have 200 limit. So you will get a 201 error.
Mm-hmm.
In a synchronous means, let's say I'm updating a record, right?
Yes.
Could be via API or could be via the UI. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, the triggers will get invoked, and inside the triggers, there will be Apex methods that are executed. That data update is called one transaction. Okay. And inside the transaction, for example, like in our case, where we get the 101 error is on the assessments, right? Knowledge assessments. Whenever we submit knowledge assessment, what happens is there are tens of assessment record are getting updated in the database. As part of that is one transaction, that is an action. Salesforce treats that as one transaction. Now Salesforce will take the answers to the assessment, try to insert in the system or update in the system. As part of that update, there are other Apex classes that are invoked, which will update your certificates, which will update or trigger your REMS services. Okay, all of these executions, right? It updates the cases and it reads your pharmacy accounts, and all other multiple records are getting retrieved. So the one transaction which has multiple Apex code execution is triggering more than 100 queries. That's why we see the best practices, how to avoid that. Now, the one problem with REMS is that the REMS service is invoked left and right for every action. If you update one case, it has direct dependency with the REMS service, and that gets invoked. Every time a REMS service invoked, there are like, solid 20 to 30 SQL queries that we do to understand what is the status of the REMS service. We do query to get the program, what is the REMS program, and we do query to get the other settings, right? Everything adds up against the limit. It's not just the assessment that we update. As part of the assessment processing, we update case, REMS, we read REMS service, we create task, update task, send the email. We do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, got it.
If you do the same in batch, you would not have this problem. So if you put a simple at future method, if it is not a like synchronous in the sense like the user will wait and get the response immediately, right? Asynchronous means like I submit, I will wait for the result. Means I will go and do other process. At that time, we will not have this problem. 101 error we will not get. If you put a at future method in your Apex class, we can avoid the 101 error for the time being.
Okay.
Okay. Durai, Imran, limits point of view.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So there are only 10 send emails allowed. You cannot send more than like 10 email request in one
Yes,
email.
I have one doubt.
Yes.
If there is a metadata, means it's not counted as query, right?
Yeah, custom settings, custom metadata won't add up against SQL queries. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but catch, there is a limit. Only 10 MB is allowed per organization. So you cannot put more data in your metadata and custom settings.
Okay, thank you.
Riaz, will this vary based on the license or like even this license doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter. So these are like transactional, like Apex is like programming, right? These are programming limits. There are certain other limits that can change by license, like your API, total number of API callouts per day, right? That changes from license type, number of users, it changes. Apex code limit, like certain organization, like every organization has a 3 MB code limit. All your Apex programs can be only 3 MB. If you have written more Apex programs, then you can get exception from Salesforce that can be increased, right? Number of custom fields in an object is 500, I believe, or 500 something or 800 something. So if you are exceeding that limit, you can raise a case and increase that limit. So those are like system limits that can be changed or increased, but this limits no.
Okay.
Yes.
So there is a cursor, you mentioned it, right? I saw it somewhere. Is it something cursor? Apex cursor per day, 10,000, is it?
It's per day. I
execution or like what is it? Cursors to be?
No, like if there are like let's say I'm just taking an example. If there are cursors like are against the objects, right? If you have 1,000 objects, right, then you might be creating 10,000 or 1,000 cursors to access that data in the database or object. So I believe that you cannot have more than 10,000 cursors per day, which means like honestly, I have not used the cursors where this comes into picture, but it is primarily with the data access, like high volume databases. We call it HBB or HLB, high volume data. Okay, where there are like millions of records exist in an object. At that case, we can build a custom index, and we can have that will be based on the indexes. You will have cursors, right? So your executions cannot have more than 10,000 cursors. It's on the data access level.
Okay, this is not a per user, like it is like for per
Per day.
org, right? Per day and per org.
Per day, yes, per day, per org, correct. This is whenever we have high volume data, high data volume, so that at that places the cursors will come into picture. To increase the efficiency of the data access, we do that.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, we can create custom indexes as well. For that, we need to work with Salesforce to create custom index to help us retrieve data faster, other than the ID and name. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Again, the heap size is again 6 MB. Recently, I came to know this heap size has a very big impact. So we'll review all of those. So far, this limits, are we all clear? Okay. So every transaction in Salesforce, either it commits or it doesn't commit. This trigger order of execution is another concept which we need. Every developer should be aware of this. There is no exception. Okay. So when you save a record, Salesforce executes these actions. So I would strongly suggest to go through this. Okay. And because this will, every point, you will have whatever you have worked so far, you would be able to relate it here. Okay. The one critical thing that I want to highlight here is there are in triggers, we have before triggers and after triggers. Okay. So your before trigger and after trigger, we have, whenever we write a trigger, we have to be very careful about this. You cannot have multiple triggers written against one object. That would complicate the sequence, and you might get into some redundancy issues, which will hit governor limits, and your transaction fails. Okay. So please be careful on the triggers that you create. Okay. And the other thing I want to make sure is what sort of updates that we do. So, okay, before trigger, we do data updates. Like if I'm going to create a contact, right? If I want to calculate the proximity of the contact to the university, okay, or to a particular address, right? At the time, in the before trigger, I can calculate anything and add or update a field in the contact. Okay, so that way, before triggers are very helpful. Like you can manipulate the data in the record. In the after trigger, you cannot manipulate the data because it is partially committed to the database, saves the records to the database, right? So before trigger, you can do all your data changes. That is absolutely okay. In the after trigger, no data change is allowed. You can still do the data update, but it becomes a cycle again. I'll try to show that in a code so you guys can understand that. So I want you guys to be very careful with the before and after triggers. This is the most critical point. I'll let you guys go through the rest of the stuff. I will share this link. But this is absolutely mandatory for every developer. If you really want to be a developer, please understand that. Okay. So limits, this order of execution is very important. If there is any problem in any of this execution, the system will stop the transaction and it will not do any commit to the database. Okay. So here even it says record saves to the database, the commit never happens. Okay. The commit happens only at the end of the execution. Okay. So here it says commits all DML operations to the database. That's at the end. After the commit, all the synchronous activities will get triggered. If anything happens until this point, any failures, the system does not commit anything to the database. So please, spend time, go through this, understand this. Here they have given a pictorial representation. So yeah, take a printout of this, honestly, and keep it handy with you guys. Most of the trouble happens not understanding this execution from a developer point of view. Okay. Also take a print. Color. Escape. Okay. Print. So understand limits, understand the order. Okay. Now the best practices will make sense. Okay. All these best practices like bulkifying your code. Have you guys used a data loader to load data? Any of you? Data loader. No one. Seriously. Okay. That's fine. Okay. I will explain what is bulkifying your code is all means. Okay. Before that, have you guys used APIs to insert data into Salesforce without UI? Like I understand UI, anyone, we all would have practiced login.salesforce. Other than the UI, have you guys used API to insert data? Yes, no. Okay, I'll take that as a no. There is one. Okay. There is this custom object called match. I just want to insert more records into this to show how the bulkification impacts. Before that, I want to see the records. Pharmacy employees. You guys are comfortable with the developer console, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Team 1, team 2, 360 is okay. Let me query this. So here I have just created like this many records already existing in 22 records. Okay. Now I want to create 5 more records. Let's say we are conducting a border trophy, India versus Australia, right? So let's create, I want to create like, 5 records, 5 test matches, 5 records I want to create. Okay. So the one way we can do it is we go to the tabs, match. Here we can create new and we can enter what is the team 1, what is the team 2, and what is the match ID. It would be border trophy 24 test T1. Is this naming convention make sense? Okay. T4 test 1. T1. This is okay. So this is one way of creating a record. You guys agree? I'll just save here. So it creates one record. Okay. So at this time, your trigger receives one record from the UI and it processes that record. Okay. If I use data loader or if I use the import facility, which is available in Salesforce itself, data import wizard, we can insert multiple records. So right now I created one record. So I got one record inserted here. Now I want to insert more records. I'll open a Excel new blank file. Okay. I'll go here. This is name, team 1, team 2. Okay, I don't want to enter 50s, 100s because I don't know what is going to happen. So name, we already have T1. Let me add a T2. Team 1 is always India. Team 2 is always Australia. How many test match are in this series? Any idea?
5.
Okay, so I'll create only 5 records. So now I'm adding 5 records. Let's say this is BT24 records downloads. I'll save it as a CSV file just for simplicity. Okay. Now I have 4 records I'm inserting to the database. Before that, I want to make sure we have written one simple Apex trigger. Triggers. There are no triggers so far. I'll create file, new Apex trigger, name, match, trigger. This object is match. Match. Okay. Match, I will call it as before trigger. Submit. So I'm creating one trigger. Okay. In this trigger, I'm just displaying new record size. Just displaying the size of the number of records that I'm getting. Okay, that is a problem. Trigger dot new. Variable does not exist. Okay. The variable name, it is nothing but trigger dot new. That is it. Trigger dot new dot.
Sir, is the console.log is working here?
Thank you, man. I'm spending too much time on JavaScript. Yeah. Now here also it says trigger dot new as variable does not exist. Trigger dot new. Trigger on match. Trigger dot new is the variable name that is default available. Match or insert. Interesting. Okay. I don't know why it is working now. Okay, so now it is working. I'm just displaying the number of records that we get in the trigger. Okay, whenever we use the UI, we get one record. But if we use the data loader or the APIs, we can get multiple records. Ah, crap, the size is not right. Trigger.new works. But trigger.new.size is not working. That is weird. Okay, anyway. So this is the list. And so it is a list of records. So let me create a list. Which is equal to debug matches dot size. I missed the parameter. Okay. So I want to use the right function. So anyway, so this will return the number of records that we receive in the input. That's all. No other processing, nothing. Okay. So I will use the import wizard. Import wizard, I will choose what is the object. Match is the custom object. Add new records. I will add the CSV file that we just created. This is the CSV file. Okay. Open. Next. Shows the mapping. Example name team1, team2. Match ID. Team1 map. Team2 map. I'm just doing these are all self-explanatory. You guys can try this out. Try to insert records to your system. There are 3 fields map. I'll start the import. Okay. So there are now 4 records processed. If I go to the logs, debug. So now we received 4 records in the trigger. This is what we get. So as part of the match trigger, the number of records we received was 4. The biggest mistake that we all do is we always think that only UI is the source of data entry, and in the UI we receive only 1 record, but via APIs, via external systems, we can receive multiple records. So our code must be always bulkified. Never ever code like this, assuming that will be only 1 record. Always code for multiple records. Does this make sense? Durai, Rishita, Sanjana, is this okay? Makes sense why we should code for multiple records handling in the trigger?
Yeah. Yes, we are. It's clear.
Okay. Abdullah, SM, BS, Ruben, Azim.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is clear, right? Why we should bulkify our code. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Okay. Okay, good. So that's the first thing. And the second is to make sure we don't use SQL queries and DML statement inside for loop. Okay. We have seen the limits. 100 SQL queries is what we can do in a transaction, and 150 DML is what we can do in a transaction. Okay. So if you put anything inside a for loop, right, we might over or we might consume the limit very faster. Okay, so never ever put the DML SQL inside a for loop. Never. Try to add the data in a list. Okay, and do one insert or update to the list variable. So if you see here, so here they added contacts to update in a list. All the processing happened, consulted all the data in a list, and do one transaction. So this is a single DML update. In this case, if there are 10 records, we are doing 10 DML. If there are 100 records, we do 100 DML. So 151 records means the system will stop processing. It will throw an error saying that DML limit reached. Okay. Similarly, SQL query limit reached. So we should avoid queries in the loop. Does this practice make sense? Why you should not use a SQL query or a DML statement inside a for loop? Because you have only 100 and 150 limits. You don't have more. Similarly, don't put the send email in a for loop at all. Okay, that is also very limited. Number of emails that you can send. I saw it 16 somewhere. Send emails 10. Okay. Never ever do those things inside a loop. Or put it in a function and call that inside a loop. No, don't do that. Does that make sense? Why we should avoid? See, we should always bulkify our code, means we should be ready to handle multiple records. And we should never do processing or like insertion or query inside a for loop. That is worst mistake we can do. Is that 2 point clear? Komati?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is that clear? Those 2 points?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'll come back to the helper methods. Before that, I want to cover the usage of collections. Okay. We you, especially new to Salesforce or new to programming or new to development. Okay, we tend to use the basic syntax, right? Collections are very powerful. Okay. Can you tell what are the collections we have in Apex? I have a link here. I can open it, but anyone, any guess what collections do we have?
List, map, and set.
List, map, and set. Okay, fantastic. So, okay, this isn't going to the developer guide, but yeah. So list, map, and set are the collections that we have. It is you should know how to make use of it. Like arrays are very, very helpful. Okay. Set is again very helpful. All of those collections have its own advantages. It's nothing but a data structure, right? How you store the data, how you retrieve the data. Okay. So you should be very familiar, very comfortable with it, right? You should not be like me, where I had challenges putting dot size instead of just the functions. So if you guys are very hands-on, make sure you guys understand list, set, and map very well. Okay, these three are the provides the basic structure, but you can have complex structures where in a map you can have one key and the value can be a list or value can be another map, right? So some examples we have such structures. So where you have a country, state, city mapping. So you can have map of string, which can have a map of string, comma, string. Okay. So the options keep growing. You can have map of string, comma, list of string. Okay, you can have map of string, comma, a structure which you can define, like you guys have defined wrapper classes. So you can have match wrapper, right? So that once you understand the basics, like you can have you can handle complex requirements very easily. Okay, so country, city, state, we can just put it in one map where your map will have IN as the key, which will have another map, which will have state and cities. So this should be something like this. Not map, it would be list or set of string. Okay, so country you can have, and you can have a state which can have a list or a set. Okay, Bangalore. Okay, so anything that you want to handle, try to make use of collections. That would be very, very effective. Okay, so you need to understand the collections very well. What is there? Okay, so basically list, set, and map. Yes.
Sir, can you please tell us what is match wrapper?
A match wrapper, I just put one example, like it can be a simple Apex class. It's a wrapper class, okay, or it can be an object, match __ C. You can have maps like this. You can have a object, single object, or a list of objects. Match wrapper is just a reference that I used, a custom object. We always think this is like a primitive data types, right? More than primitive data type, you can have any structure. Match wrapper, just an example that I used.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so collections has to be very effectively used. Okay, and that will avoid a lot of loops. Here they have given some examples, but you can review them. And collections have multiple functions: dot has, dot contains key, okay, dot copy. I don't know copy is there or not, but yeah, the more you understand the collections, your code would be more simpler, more readable, I would say. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to make sure, are we clear with this practice, why we have to use collections? Okay. Now here they mentioned streamlining queries. It is basically avoiding multiple queries, whether if you can combine the queries, that would be more helpful. It will help you achieve lesser CPU time and lesser number of queries. So here we are retrieving the opportunities. We are reading the opportunities database twice, which can be avoided by streamlining, by making sure you're writing efficient query. So by this way, you can read opportunities and use the stage name as a key in the map and store the list of opportunities as the value. Okay. So streamlining queries, reducing or avoiding number of queries that we are using. Wherever possible, you can try to query the data together. Yeah. Clear? Collections. Make use of collections. That is always good. Okay. Use of limits method again, this is not needed. At future, we'll come to that. Okay, yeah, this one is very basic. never hard code your ID. Can anyone guess why? Why it is not advised to hard code IDs in the programs?
If you hard code that ID and it will work only for that particular ID, and whenever you take the few other record IDs, it's not going to take that particular record.
Correct. Also, your IDs are org specific. Those are not universal, right? So if you put an ID in your sandbox, unfortunately, if you move your code to another org, right? At that time, this ID may not exist in that org. So IDs are org specific. Okay, so it is always recommended not to hard code IDs. You can put the ID in a custom label if you want, or put it in a custom setting. That's absolutely okay. And never hard code IDs, because the IDs are not org specific. And I'll give one more example, Salesforce record ID, right? So this is what to say. It's very interesting concept how Salesforce uses their ID. Okay, if you guys noticed, the first 3 digits are an identifier. Using a record ID, if you give a record ID, Salesforce can say what is the object it belongs to. You also can identify that once work on a particular account, particular project for a longer time. Okay, so all Salesforce record IDs have 18 characters, and 15 I think is case sensitive, 18 is case insensitive. Okay, if there are for standard objects, all the standard objects like account, contact, user, opportunity, they all have standard prefix. Okay, if you create a custom object, let's say today we created a match custom object, right? There is a custom object called match. If you see the prefix A02, that's the prefix to identify that this record belongs to match object. Okay, if I go to users, or if I go to any other object, okay, query editor, I'll just try to query from contact. Last modified today, query. There are no records that are last modified today. Okay. If you see the contact, it is 003. If you look at account, it is 001. User 500, so something like that. So if we create a new object in sandbox, if you deploy that object to production org, there is no guarantee that we'll get the same prefix in production. Okay, and the okay, so it is always recommended not to hard code the IDs because of various reasons. One, the record value, the IDs are specific to the org. So when you move your code, migrate your code, the code will fail because the logic doesn't exist. Okay. Is this clear? That you should never hard code IDs in your program. Why we should not hard code? Okay. We want to cover the rest of the stuff. We'll cover it tomorrow. Okay. Before that, I want to make sure you guys write Apex programs. Okay. In your Apex programs, if you have not written something try to see the code that already exists in your org. Okay, see whether any of the best practices been violated. Okay, if it is violated, report it and fix it. If you see any query inside a for loop, this is the opportunity to fix that. Okay, if you see any trigger that are not bulkified, please fix it.
Here, yes, I have two doubts.
Yes.
In importing, right? I recently worked on importing bulk data in pick list values. But if the pick list was restricted, why can't we able to import?
Because it is restricted, right? It is a limitation that we are putting in the system. You just go to the object manager in the pick list, you do the uncheck.
Okay.
It won't restrict. The data import will not fail. In any of the pick list value, you have the option to this is not a good example, but you have an option to say whether you want to restrict the values limited to this value, or you want to allow additional values. If you allow additional values, your system won't, your import will not fail.
Okay. Can we able to do field dependency while importing it?
I don't understand the question.
Can we able to set field dependence, like we have categories and subcategories?
Okay.
We can able to set field dependency while importing values to that pick list.
You can set field dependencies. You can check yes. If the that is again nothing to do with the import. And whenever record happens, if you do the field dependency, if my category is global, right? Then you can say the subcategory can be A. My category is local. Like you can say my subcategory is B. So like that, you can set the dependency. Okay, that will not have any impact on your import. You can set the dependencies.
Okay, can I share my screen now?
Yep, sure.
Actually, the second doubt is I try to map user ID in technician object.
Okay.
Is my screen visible? Like
Yes.
I just created
Great.
a linked user ID field.
Okay.
Like I don't see user ID here. One second.
That's a formula field, right? That's a text field. Okay.
Yeah, it's a text field. So here I can't able to see user ID.
You have running user
Like
ID.
if the user is created, that technician name should be added, and the user ID also, that user ID should go to the technician name, like a linked user ID.
Okay, see, we are creating a technician record, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and we are creating a technician record on what action? At the time of user creation?
Yeah.
Okay, at the time the record ID is your, the flow starts based on the user record. So record.id should be the, what to say, user ID.
Yeah. But what is the difference between individual ID and the user ID? Because I can able to see individual ID only here.
No, this is triggering user. If you go back to alter sources.
Okay.
No, that next to the trigger. If you go to the value, so record triggered flow, right? And the record triggered flow is based on the user record.
Yeah.
Right? User record created or edited.
If user record is created or edited, then I just get technician record.
Based on?
No condition. It is like actually these two things does not require. I just testing right now. This is the main. I just want to create a technician record, and I just want to get the user ID and map it to the technician this field.
Yeah, the record ID is correct. Whatever you have right now, record ID, that should bring the user ID because.
Can I able to do like 1 second?
Sure.
So here it is a triggering user, right?
No. Just go back to the top. Now just scroll up. The value next to the linked user ID.
Yeah, this one. Okay.
Yeah. If you see not get records, create records, scroll down, there will be a record, not a global variable. We don't need the global variable because the triggering record, there will be a triggering record. Not any of this. This is global variable, and this is same for all the flows. If you scroll above,
Yes.
scroll above. Yeah, we have decision, we have get record, global constant, global variables. Okay, that's weird. Do new resource. Just do variable. Okay.
Text only, right?
And text is okay. Default only click. I'm not seeing the user record at all. That is where I'm surprised. The triggering record, or it will be called triggering record or record, right?
Yeah.
That will have the record, the user values like user ID, name, everything would be there.
Yeah, user ID is not that. I don't know how what happened.
Okay, the link to user ID, right? What is the field type of it? Is it a lookup?
It's a text field.
A text field.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the technician name, how you are able to see the record first name, last name?
Sorry.
The field, yeah, in the technician name.
Okay.
And the value side, you see record first name, right? How you are able to
Yeah,
access that?
It is like I just 1 second. I just use triggering user record.
Oh. Okay. The triggering user is not the right. Triggering user is like, say you are the user, right? If you are creating a user for me, basically you want to read my data, the new records data, not your data, like, into the technician information.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, anyway.
The user is created there like properly, but I just want that ID. That's what.
Then use this $record.id. That is what will be sufficient. If you're able to get the data, use that.
How?
Use the triggering user itself.
Can we use like individual ID? We don't have to use it, right?
No, there is a record. There should be a record ID. You don't see record ID?
Yeah.
Relationship field. No. The triggering user itself, there should be a record ID. Scroll down.
No, that's it. Yesterday I tried this. I can't able to find this. That's why I yesterday.
Scroll down. You see record fields.
User ID.
User ID.
User ID, right? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yes. You can use that.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, great. So yeah. So please, check your Apex codes. Okay, we'll review the other best practices tomorrow. But please write code. Okay, if you're not able to write code, see what other person has written. Okay, and see, try to understand it. But without understanding, without writing, all these sessions are useless. So please practice and come back with questions. I think we are over and a bit. We'll catch up tomorrow. We'll go back. We'll review the other best practices as well. I want to cover the best practices in Lightning Web Components too. Okay, but yeah, these are a good start. Please practice the code so that you have questions. We will talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, Satyan, you have a question?
Hi, Riaz.
Hey, yes.
Yeah, yes. So can I share my screen?
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I have created an issue object, sir. In that object, I have created the facility field as a pickup list and asset name as lookup field, sir.
Okay.
And then if the status is acknowledged means I should add the issue to tasks. But my use case is when I am adding to task, the facility name is auto populating, but my asset name is not coming automatically.
So from issue, you're trying to create a task.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And this is a standard task that you're trying to create.
Yes, sir.
You use the standard button, right? New task.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Like, if you use the standard button, I don't think we have an option to bring the value from the parent record.
Okay. But facilities is fetching.
No, facility, you say it is fetching, right? If you click on that, facility business, right? If you kept business as default value, obviously it will show business as the default. Even if your facility is hospital, if you do if in your issue, set the facility to hospital, do a add task, new task, it will stick to a business. If business is selected as the default value. So it is not the value that is coming from the parent record. It is the default value that you have in the task.
Not like that. Here the facilities assembly, sir. And when I click the add to task, the facility shows the same assembly.
Okay. I have no idea how that is happening.
But I have created the URL, button link URL, sir.
Okay.
I have
So
linked
this is a custom
the
button.
what ID. Yeah, and I have created the what ID to the issues in the ID, sir. But when I am try to link the asset name to the task means the error is populating. Just wait a minute.
Okay. What is the field name? So this is not a standard button. This is a custom button.
Field name. It's a add to task button, sir.
Correct. That's a custom button. Right. Okay. Yeah. Can you cancel this now? And if you see the field and properties, go to field and properties of the issue. This is the asset field name that we have. Asset name. So the field name is asset underscore name underscore underscore C, right? Can you copy that field name?
I copied.
Fantastic. Come back to the notepad. Yeah, instead of asset underscore del 2, yeah, replace asset name there. Sorry, in the task, right? In the task, what is the field, asset field name? Go back to the task object manager. Now we have to replace the task asset name. Okay.
But it is linked with the activity, I think so.
Okay, check the activity, please.
It is asset del 2.
Yeah, the del2 is what I'm worried. Why we are getting del2? Can you edit?
Yeah.
You deleted this field and then you re-added it, or
No, sir.
it looks like it is a delete. Otherwise, like it won't look like that. Field name, just change the field name from del2.
Is it okay?
Remove del2, yeah. Remove del also. What you want? Del asset. Yeah, asset is fine. Okay, save. So see, cannot rename child class Apex class trigger is using this. Okay, fix your Apex controller, asset controller.
Can get these.
Okay, that's fine. So logically, what you're saying is asset del2 is your API name, but when you are not able to get the value of the asset name from issue into the activity field.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that should ideally work. If you go to the notepad, to Control Z, the del2 is correct. Control Z. Yeah. So this is correct. This should be getting you the value.
Yes.
What is the error you're getting?
That means the add to task button it is not working. And I'm including the asset del2. And
What
when
is
I'm
it?
reviewing, and when I'm removing the asset del2 means the asset add to task button it is perfectly working. Means like this. Like this error is populating.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, we need to check why that del2 field is not accessible. Okay, this is a custom button. Set del2. Get. Can you create a lookup in task instead of activity? Just create a lookup in task and see whether you're able to populate the value. But you can go back to the text notepad. So the facility, right? It is a field in task or activity.
It is in issue, sir.
No, facility. Facility __ C.
It is in
The first parameter.
Yeah.
It's in task. Because activity only we can create custom fields, right? Yeah, check the correlation, like how you are able to set up value to facility and why you're not able to set up asset. If they both are from the same object, it should ideally work. Okay.
Okay.
The other challenge would be, is the data type same for both asset del2 and asset name? Check whether that, yeah, it is a lookup only, right? It should ideally work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also will check back later.
Okay.
Yeah, so if any of you guys interested, please get in touch with Satyan to resolve this error. Okay, you guys are most welcome to work together and resolve issues. Okay. Sanjana, Mahesh, what his name, Sudalai. Yeah, please, work on these problems so that we guys can learn.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We'll talk tomorrow. Okay,
Okay, yes, thank you.
thank you.
Hey.